Hi, my name is Jacob Dotson, and I'm going to be talking with you today about some of my favorite resources for reading the Hebrew and Greek text of the Old and New Testament. And as I'll walk through these, they go from resources that are primarily all in the original text to those that have supplements with the English text either beside or below the original Hebrew and Greek. So sit back, relax, and join me as we go on this adventure looking at these resources today. Just to get us started, I'll be taking the most common and scholarly version of the Hebrew Old Testament known as Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. And the value of this resource is that it not only provides the original Hebrew text of the Old Testament, but another important thing that it does is it presents that text with valuable footnotes in something called a critical apparatus. So as we read through the text, and in this case, I'm turned to Genesis chapter 23, and we can see up here, the text goes from right to left. And as I'm starting up there, here we are in Genesis chapter 23, verse 7. Vayakam Avraham, and he rose, and Abraham rose. And as you look towards the bottom of the text, you will see all types of textual notes on different particular parts of this chapter where there are alternate readings, whether they be from the Dead Sea Scrolls or the Greek version of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, the Aramaic translation of the Old Testament, the Targums, the Samaritan Pentateuch, and a variety of other sources. And all of these references to the critical apparatus are explained at the front of the volume, and all of the abbreviations are explained as well. This is the most common scholarly version of the Old Testament that one would typically use in seminary, and I have used it for personal devotions and study, even after graduating from seminary, and it's an excellent resource. Similarly, one finds that same type of format in the United Bible Society's Greek New Testament. The Greek text is known as an eclectic text, and it draws from a variety of different Greek manuscripts, and they're referenced here in the beginning. There's a whole bunch of symbols and references to older manuscripts, and similar to the Hebrew version I showed you just a little bit ago, as you look at the footnotes at the base of the Greek text, you'll see an explanation of various manuscripts and their variant readings as they relate to the text above. So you see here this unique character that I have my finger beside. In Hebrew, that's an aleph, an A, and that stands for Codex Sinaiticus, which was a Greek manuscript found in St. Catherine's Monastery in the Sinai, the base of Mount Sinai, and that's one of our old Greek manuscripts that we have, one of the oldest in existence of a larger portion of the Greek New Testament. And then you see the variant reading that it has that can be found above in the text. And here we have the text of Matthew chapter 18, starting at verse 15. Eande hamartese, ese ha adelphos su. So this is a great way to study the Greek New Testament, be aware of some of the variants and the readings as you go along. And this would be a scholarly resource, but something that you could use in your own devotions as you continue to go deeper in your Greek studies. The same type of volume exists for the Greek version of the Old Testament, the Septuagint. And we have our Greek text, and below we have another critical apparatus with those old manuscripts available, showing you variant readings from other Greek manuscripts. And this is an excellent one-volume version of the Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint. And as you can see here, I actually turned to 2 Maccabees. All of the titles of the books are given in Latin and as well as Greek. On the left, we have the Greek Maccabeon, And then on the right, we have the Latin. And this is one of those deuterocanonical, or as some traditions would call it, apocryphal books that is included in the Greek version of the Old Testament, but is not found in the Hebrew. But if you wanted to read that in Greek, this would be an excellent way to do that. At the beginning of the volume, there's also a very nice explanation of the different versions of the Septuagint and the history of its importance. And it's a very good resource. But some might not be as comfortable with reading in the original languages. And in some cases, it might be helpful to have English right beside the Greek text, or to have what's known as an interlinear. So I'm going to show you several options for that at this moment. The NIV Interlinear Greek-English New Testament. And this is a great resource for engaging with the text. And what you have is the Greek text, and right below it, a literal English translation. And then beside that, to the left, you will see the NIV translation. So here I am turned to Luke chapter 17, and we see at the top of the text there, verse 23, kai apusen humin. And then you can see right under that, it reads, and they will say to you, and then you can go all the way over here to the left, and it will say, men will tell you. This is a way to read the Greek with a direct English translation and then be able to compare it to another modern translation, the NIV. And it's a helpful way to study and read the text. Some people prefer to stay a little bit more grounded in the Greek with a little bit less help with English translation. And for something like that, I might recommend a Reader's Greek New Testament. And in this text, you'll see something really interesting. As you look at the Greek text, this is the Paul's letter to the Galatians. You'll see beside the various words that don't have a large frequency of usage have footnotes beside them. And so for these less common words, as you go down to the bottom of the page and you see the references to the footnotes, they're English translations of the words. So if you have a basic Greek vocabulary, this is called a reader's edition because you can read along, catch those basic words, but then when you come to harder words, you can use those footnotes at the bottom of the page to have those English glosses, those simple definitions. And that's another way to engage with the Greek text, and it is quite helpful. Some might prefer to engage with the original language text in parallel columns, and this is a good example of that. The Jewish Publication Society Hebrew-English Tanakh, which is another word for the Old Testament. Tanakh stands for the Torah, the law, the Nevi'im, which is the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which means the writings. And when you put the first part of each of those words together, you get to Tanakh. In Hebrew, Tanakh. And so in this example, I'm going to turn here to the Psalms, Psalm 54. You'll see on the left, you have the New Jewish Publication Society translation, and on the right, you have the Hebrew Masoretic text taken from Biblia, Hebraica, Stuttgartensia, which is the Hebrew text that we looked at earlier, which is based on the Leningrad Codex, an old version of the Hebrew text that we have. And this is a great way to engage with the text. And here you can read on the left, for the leader with the instrumental music, a maskil of David. And then you have the same, but in the Hebrew on the right, le mansech. It's hard for me to read with this font size. Bin Gana Mashkil David. So you have a way to compare the Hebrew and the English side by side, and it's another interesting way to engage with the text. Finally, I'm going to share a resource that I've highlighted on my channel before. It's a valuable resource that is an interlinear translation, Hebrew, English, and Greek, but it also is coded to Strong's numbers. So if you would like to not only read the original text, but then also quickly consult another resource that unpacks it further, you could use this resource. And you can see above each Hebrew word, there is a Strong's number, and below each Hebrew word is an English translation. If I turn to the New Testament and just quickly hold up the text, you can see a Greek word here, this word dodeca, which means 12. If you look below it, you can see the English translation says 12. And then above it, you have the Strong's number 1427. If you look that up, you can see what the significance is for the letter 12. And it would be another way to go deeper with that information. I want to thank you for taking time in reviewing all these resources with me. It's a great joy to be able to share this information and my passion for these things. There's so many wonderful resources available to us now. If you're wanting to study Hebrew and Greek and go deeper with our reading of the Old and the New Testament, we can avail ourselves of the richness of these resources. And we're fortunate that a lot of these resources, if you buy used or search around, you can get them for an affordable price. Thank you for taking time to join me for this video. And until next time, goodbye.